We have a 1 seed that nobody saw coming. We have the 10 seed that I think a lot of people expected to be there at the top for much of the season. Remember, Miami was the number 2 team in the country before they were upset by Louisville. They stubbed their toe again on the road against SMU. And so as Indiana has ascended to number 1, they've crushed everybody in their path. Miami has kind of regained this confidence, returned over the engine to get to this point. There are a number of storylines that I think we can go through. I kind of wanted to draft storylines. So Garrett, I'll start with you. The top storyline, in your opinion, between the Hoosiers and the Hurricanes is what?
Yeah, for me, it's a big question of who's going to win at bully ball, right? This is kind of the MO for both of these teams. Both of these teams love being physical, love dominating in the trenches, and both of them have gotten through these playoffs on the back of some strong running games with effective passing, right? I think a lot can be made of these two quarterbacks and the prestige that they bring, but for as much as we think of these all season, they've only thrown for 300 plus 3 different times between the two of them, right? Mendoza did it against Michigan State. Beck did it against USF and Virginia Tech, but they both average pretty high numbers on the ground. They're both very effective on the ground. Indiana averaging 5.3 on the ground, Miami averaging 4.2, and both of them right around 3 yards against them on the ground. Somebody's going to win the trenches, right? It's a little cliche, right? Everyone says it starts up front, but this is extremely true in a game like this. And if that game turns into a back and forth struggle where, there's momentum swings and all that, it's going to happen because of what's happening in the trenches. And it's probably going to be on these two very talented quarterbacks, not to tear it up through the air, but to make that one play, right? Who can find that clutch third down conversion, who can, find a way to extend a drive at the very end, something like that. I think whoever can win that style of football, both very similar for both of these teams, whoever can win that and just kind of go bully ball versus bully ball, that's going to end up being who wins this game.
I think it's an interesting dichotomy too, because both of these teams are at their absolute best when they're running the football well, right? You look at Miami, the talent, the blue chip ratio that they have on this roster. Miami is built for this moment, right? This is a championship team that's been grown in a lab down in South Beach. And yet on the other side, you have Indiana, who does not have that blue chip ratio, does not have all the 4 and 5 stars, but they've been so disciplined, so well coached, that this team's bread and butter is running the football and is gaining large chunks on the ground to then set up the efficiency of the air attack that Fernando Mendoza obviously rode to a Heisman Trophy. So I think that's a great point. Guys, I'm going to go with the Miami ties in this one. I mean, there is Mr. Worldwide dripping out of every detail in this matchup. You've got Cristobal, who's coaching for the Canes, coming back after he played offensive line there. Is he kind of the chosen one to lead Miami back to the promised land? How about Fernando Mendoza, former 2-star quarterback out of the greater Miami area, played for Christopher Columbus High School, had to go out to Cal and now to America's heartland to reach the pinnacle of college football. Could he win a national championship in his hometown backyard? And how about the fact that no team has ever won a title in their home stadium? In fact, I don't think in college football they've ever played a college football championship in their home stadium. Certainly have not ever won one. In fact, it hadn't even happened in the NFL until it happened back to back, ironically, in 2021, 2022. So that may be the most rare stat of all. But I have no doubt that on Monday, when we show up, when we turn on the telecast, it is going to be Miami in every facet imaginable on our TV screens.
Yeah, we need to break out the pink white suits, right, with the teal undershirts.
Sure.
Garrett threw in the chat just now too that Fernando Mendoza's dad also played with Cristobal too, so that's a fun crossover. So good call on that, Garrett.
At that same high school too.
Yeah,
that's insane.
So there's a lot of familiarity between two programs that you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, and I think that's what has been so fun and exciting about this college football playoff. Indiana, obviously, the unexpected ascendancy to the dominant force in college football. We talked about Miami kind of having to play the lovable underdog, I guess, in a little bit of a sense, right? Clawing their way back in. Trey, you are also looking at kind of this paradigm shift in college football, but you're looking to the future in this game. Talk specifically about the rooting interests and what folks may be looking for validation when it comes to this game between the Hoosiers and the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I want to go a little more meta here and just talk about what these two teams making the championship game means for college football as a whole. Because if you look at the discourse on fan sites, on Twitter, on just anywhere that college football fans are congregating right now, everyone wants to know how their team can copy the Indiana blueprint. Can I just whisper this part? I don't know what the Indiana blueprint is other than just being like really good at evaluating the transfer portal and just executing extremely well at a rate that we haven't ever seen. I don't know. Like, I don't know that there's this magic blueprint that Kirk Cignetti's following, other than he's a really good coach. He has really good assistants, and he has older players out of the transfer portal that are really, really good at playing football. Yeah, I think the model, though, that they're looking at is how can these historically really bad programs rise to the top? And obviously Indiana, I talked about this on our recap show, the semifinals. I don't know that we've ever seen anything like this in college football. I had to pull a baseball analogy, Mitch. I don't know if you heard us talk about this. I pulled the Rice baseball analogy from the 90s when they were a doormat and Wayne Graham took them to the pinnacle of the sport in 2003. But that's what all the other historically poor programs are looking at. They're looking at Indiana as a source of hope. I don't know how realistic that is, but it's certainly a cool story to follow for other teams that have found themselves where Indiana was just a couple years ago. And on the other side of it, do maybe these underachieving sleeping giants really look at Miami as an example of staying the course, laying the foundation for a few years, letting a coach really grind and get to work? I don't know. I'm thinking of the Penn States of the world. I know it's ironic because they just fired their coach, but the Texas A&Ms, right? The Tennessees, these teams that have gone long stretches without national championships and gotten close, gotten tastes of it over the past few years, but really need to figure out how to stay the course and trust in their coaches to keep building. I don't know. I feel like this playoff, it's really sold a lot of hopium to a lot of different fan bases. You have the G5 getting 2 teams in this year. You have the Indiana story. You have the Blue Bloods, of course, that are always in. You have the team that made it all the way to the semifinals with a second string coach in Ole Miss, right? There's so many storylines and reasons that you can hope in your team because of this playoff. But the winner here, I feel like, is going to decide how head coaches get to operate for the next short stint, right? Because if Miami finds a way to win, the narrative is going to be, wow, Mario Cristobal battled through some hot seat talk, really battled through some rough times where they were really not sure about his future, and he stayed the course. He built the foundation. Look where they got him. If Indiana wins, it's going to shorten that timeline for a lot of coaches because every fan and every booster is going to be pointing at Kirk Cignetti and wondering why their guy couldn't get it done in 2 years like he did.
Well, and I think you make a lot of good points there. I have thoughts on a couple of them. Let me start with Miami because I think that's maybe the most fascinating adjustment that could happen to fan expectations. To your point, Cristobal had suffered some of the worst gaffes in his time at Miami, right? The time management issues, the losing at home, the failed expectations, not feeling like he was ready for the moment. There were so many instances where it just felt like, well, Miami might be a really good football team, but their head coach can't get out of his own way and is ultimately going to prevent them from winning a championship. And then, of course, the year that they're hosting the national championship in South Beach, it all seemingly comes together, but not in the way that Indiana has made it happen, where they've just steamrolled their way to a 15-0 record. It happened with some of those black eyes, right? With losing at home to Louisville on a Friday night, to going out to Dallas on a Saturday morning and just not getting up for that game, turning the ball over and over again and letting SMU, a team that had suffered several bad losses of their own, feel like they had conquered the champions of the world when they knocked off the Hurricanes. We left Miami for dead. And I think that we were starting to circulate the same old storylines about Cristobal. He can't get it done. He's not ready for the moment. He's going to waste another roster. And yet he has found a way to lean into the strengths of his team. I think in some regard, get out of the way, let his coordinators coach, let the offense and the athletes that they have cook, let the defense do what they do best. I have an interesting point that I heard doing some research for this about the similarities between Indiana and Miami's defenses, but how they present different ways that I think is going to be an interesting talking point. But I think to bring this to a close on Miami, I think if Cristobal is able to get it done, it should be a lesson for fan bases that, hey, progress is not always linear, right? Sometimes it is one step forward, 2 steps back. before we find a way through. Patience is a dying virtue in this world, especially in the world of college football. And so I think there is something aside from all the money, the resources, the blue chips that Miami has to learn from if the Canes are to win this championship.
And our sample size is still very small. We've only done the 12-team playoff for 2 years,
Sure.
but we kind of have evidence that seeding doesn't necessarily matter as much as we thought it might, right?
Yeah.
Like it's as long as they keep this format where there's a break for the top four, unless you're Indiana, of course, and you just steamroll everybody. But I think seeding, Miami being a 10 seed getting here, gives a lot of fan bases a lot of hope that if they just get in the tournament, they actually do have a shot, similar to March Madness, where all we heard leading up to the 12-team format was it's just going to be the top four. There's never going to be any upsets, all that jazz. So a lot of exciting storylines to talk about.
Hey, Garrett, you look better and better when it comes to your philosophy of just making the field big enough to where the best team can get in. And I don't think anybody's going to say that Miami, if they win, is the best team in the country. They're the last team standing. But I think to your point, this is not just the top four teams and everybody else. In today's modern era of college football, truly anybody can come out of the woodwork and win. And that's actually how I want to turn the point around to Indiana for you. Trey mentioned that the blueprint for Indiana may be a little bit murky. Online, a lot of people are saying, well, they're not doing anything special. They're just bringing in guys with 401ks onto the roster. They're grown men playing against boys, where I think the average age for the Hoosiers is something like 22, 23 years old. I mean, it's an old football team. They don't have a starter under 21 years old. Is Indiana finding some sort of cheat code by just having an older roster, or how do you evaluate the Hoosiers?
I would say that you might have a point if, not everybody else had an opportunity to bring these guys in too.
Good point.
Anybody who wanted to could have brought in, Roman Himby when he was leaving Maryland, and whenever Mendoza left Cal, like he could have gone pretty much anywhere. Like Ohio State could have offered him if they wanted to go that direction, or Georgia could have brought him in if they wanted the caliber quarterback, and instead everyone rocked with what they got. And it turns out that maybe having some guys that have been around the block for a second, and maybe having some guys who are got the grown man bodies on them a little bit and a little bit of grown man strength, maybe that might end up being okay, right? That might help you out every now and then, especially when it comes to just understanding the process, understanding how to grind through an entire offseason, how to go through an entire season of, workouts and game prep and everything else. That's going to be the same no matter where you go. Obviously, there'll be differences, but just the mentality and the mindset of being able to get up and go every single morning, bring in what you need to, that's going to happen a lot easier for these older guys. So, I might, if we were having a conversation about Team X paid, $40 million for a roster and they're here, is that a cheat code? I might say, yeah, because, they're just spending all their money. But anybody could have had these players. I mean, it's not like this is the most talented roster. It's not like, Kurt Signetti's over here just, beating people out for the top guys in the portal every single year. I mean, he will probably
now
going forward. He will now. And it's funny to think that this might be one of his least talented teams that he ends up coaching. And it might be the one that goes 16-0 and wins a title. It's funny to think that might be what's happening right now, and that we're on the precipice of, another team that wears red being the dominant team in college football for, every single season for the next decade or something. So, anybody could have had these guys. Maybe that'll change the way people look at the portal now. Maybe they're going to be looking for more experience going forward. But I would say I feel sorry for you, but everybody could have had these guys.
Well, and I think it does, Trinidad Chambliss doing it at Ole Miss. I think it highlights productivity at any level trumps star power, trumps potential, right?
Well, and the other guy in this game, Carson Beck's pretty old too. Like he's been around the block a time or two. Wasn't it that graphic where when he was starting at Georgia, Malachi Toney was 11 or something?
Yeah,
just something really dumb like that. It's cool. But Carson Beck's been around for a little while.
Yeah, Carson's been in college for 7 seasons, I believe. So the fact was when Carson committed to Georgia, Malachi Toney was 11. So, a year before the ticker started. But
yeah,
I know the post that you're referencing. So interesting stuff, guys. I had 2 other storylines that I just wanted to pepper in there. To both of your points, this team in Indiana is being compared to the 2019 LSU team that I think is pretty widely accepted to be the greatest college football team ever assembled, right? 20 out of 22 starters went on to the NFL. Just a treasure trove of talent in Baton Rouge. The team that's now being compared to them, guys, has 8 4 and 5 stars on it. 8. That's it. Miami, by comparison, is 64% on the blue chip ratio. So again, on paper, it looks like David versus Goliath, except David's the number one team in the country and has beaten the brakes off of just about everybody that they've played, including two of the biggest brands in college football in Alabama and Oregon just to get here. The other storyline that I wanted to highlight, more of a question, but who can convert field goals into touchdowns? You talk about starting to merge into our X factors. What's going to define this game? Indiana is second in defense on the season. They've allowed just 35 total points in their last 3 games, 4 touchdowns, but 2 of those were in garbage time against Oregon. So their defense has been borderline untouchable. Miami's 5th in the country in scoring prevention. They've allowed just 44 total points in the last 3 games, and only 4 times did their opponent reach the end zone. So you wonder why the over-under is, I think, 48.5 as of time of recording. Indiana's an 8.5 point favorite. So I think they're expecting at least some points from Indiana, maybe not a lot from Miami, but I don't think this is going to be a barn burner. At least that's what Vegas is telling you. And when you look at the math on paper, it's 2 of the best defenses that we've seen all season long going head to head.